All right, let us start. Now, we're going to start with our introduction to online contracting. We've completed our discussion of offline contracting as the background to our discussion of online contracting. So we will start our discussion, and I want to start our discussion just by reviewing very briefly the incredible changes that have taken place roughly since the 1980s, 1990s and beyond, the explosion in information processing, data analysis, the threats to privacy, and which involve corresponding changes in contracting, mostly realized in online contracting. And this sets the stage for our looking at online contracting and how it differs from offline contracting. So let's think about how the world has changed for our introduction to online contracting. And I begin with one of the traditional pictures of just how rapid technological change has been. It is standard, certainly was standard around turn of the century, early 2000s to note, my goodness, look at how rapid technological change has been. And they make the usual way to make that point is the way this slide makes the point, that the time from commercial availability of a technology to its general adoption by the public has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter, as you see on the slide. And so the pace of change has greatly accelerated, getting faster and faster and faster. And that absolutely true, still true today. And what it sets a real problem for courts and businesses. Courts are not slow to respond to the courts are slow. They're not fast to respond to economic and technological changes. It is really difficult for them to keep up. Businesses do a better job. Lawyers adapting standard form contracting to this situation have done a reasonably good job. And it's that job. What did they do to adapt to the situation? That's what we want to understand as we finish out this series of video lectures about online contracting. So let's take a look, just as background, let's take a look at what Facebook knows, because one of the huge changes is that businesses now can collect massive amounts of information about their customers. Businesses have always collected information about their customers. They've done so since there was business. Same point, by the way, for governments. Ever since there's been government, governments have collected information about their citizens. But it's just that, since 1980, 1990, 2000, the power of businesses and governments, by the way, to do so has so vastly increased because of advances in computer technology and the internet. So let's look at Facebook as just an example. So what does Facebook know about you? Well, it collects a lot of information, right? You see on the site, right? Your activity on Facebook. It collects active for what you do on Facebook, including just the time you spend looking at videos. You don't have to do anything for Facebook to collect relevant information about you when you look at, say, a video or a picture. They keep track of the time you spend hovering over it. And they also collect information on other sites, and it buys a vast amount of information from other sources as well. Facebook doesn't just rely on what it collects. It buys information about you from other sources. So they know a lot about you. So, and this is from a 2016 article that they didn't explain it, but it's the information we have. It's very difficult to find difficult to locate accurate information about what businesses collect and what they do with your information, because they don't disclose that. For two reasons. I think it would be bad public relations to do so, and they don't want their competitors to know. They guard it as confidential information or as a trade secret. But this seems a reasonably reliable article. And Facebook apparently has 30,000 different categories into which it analyzes its users. That's a lot. And the same article mentioned that it has 98 data points. The article didn't explain what they meant by data point, but I think it means there are 98 critical pieces of information Facebook was collecting in 2016 to generate this 30,000 different categorizations. And it's in the slides. There would be too much to read through it, especially in a video, but let's just take to get the impression of what they know, let's just take a quick look, because the idea is just to let ourselves look at modern data collection practices, because this is one of the critical changes. And like I say, business lawyers have done a pretty good job of adapting standard form contracts to this activity. So let's take a look. You see, some of it's not surprising. Education level, field of study, where you went to school, whether you have a new job, whether you got engaged or recently married, are you going to have a baby, who your parents are, right? What type of mother you are. Do you engage in politics? That's here. Conservative or liberal? What kind of car do you drive? How old is your car? How many employees in your company? Do you own your own small business? What kind of computer operating system do you use? Do you own a gaming console? Are you an expat? Right? Do you belong to a credit union, national bank, regional bank? Do you invest? How many credit lines do you have? How many do you actively use credit cards, and what type of credit card? And it goes on. Do you have a debit card? Are you a heavy drinker of beer, wine, or spirits? Do you buy beauty? Do you buy beauty products, allergy medicines? Do you spend money on pets? Right. You look at it, wow, we might think that's remarkably invasive, right? They know a lot about you. So for perspective, let's take a look at the history of data collection. Well, because you're looking at what Facebook does, turn the clock back to the middle of the 20th century. This is an example of verifying credit, right? The credit reporting, collecting information about credit, use of credit cards, and verifying your credit worthiness, your credit rating, starts in the 19th century actually, but it's full blown in the United States by the 1940s. And this is an example before computerization. These people in the picture, the women in the picture, are opening specialized file cabinets, specialized file cabinets, to check to see whether the person has credit that is sufficient for the charge the person wants to make. These little things are pneumatic tubes, air pressure driven tubes. And so I saw this when I was a little boy. My mother would go into the department store. When I was with her, I'd see her, she'd pay with the credit card. They would take the charge and the card, and they'd send it along in one of those tubes that you see, and it would go to a place like this that you're seeing in the picture inside the department store. They would check to see whether her credit was good, and they'd send the answer down in the tube to the clerk, and then we could go ahead with the purchase. Right? It worked. If you read the history of it, it worked surprisingly well. They knew an enormous amount about their people's credit purchase practices and credit ratings, and despite the clumsiness of it, look from a modern perspective, it worked reasonably well. The world changed. Right? One of the big changes was the introduction of spreadsheets. This is a world before spreadsheets. Now we'd have the information in a spreadsheet. But by the way, it wasn't until 1985 that Excel first appeared. What you're looking at on the screen is a spreadsheet of people who shared tweets with each other on Twitter. Twitter allows you to download some of that for research purposes. And this is one, this particular download has about 40,000 rows in a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet that represents who shared a tweet with who. Oh, sorry, who shared a tweet with whom. And Excel is a convenient, much better than the file cabinets, but it's still a difficult thing to use for analyzing data, right? Here you see computational legal is one of the entities in the one of the entity that people tweet most and tweets most people. It's a central entity, right? A lot of people connect to computational legal. Very hard to see on the Excel spreadsheet, but easy to use if you use some computerized visualization techniques. That has been another huge advance, right? The ability of computers to take stuff like Excel spreadsheets and analyze them and indeed visualize them. And you see on the right-hand side a visualization of the central place that computational legal plays. Now, I've included this example because what I want to do is just illustrate the power of modern techniques with some data research I did myself. Just to point, and the point is, if I can do what I'm going to describe, what can a real expert hired by a business, the government, for somebody like the National Security Agency in the United States, what can they do? Because what I can do is a little surprising, and what they can do is miles beyond what I can do. The story behind this concerns Chelsea Ryder. I was co-teaching the introduction to computer science programming with my friend, co-author, Bob Sloan, who's the head of computer science at University of Illinois. And we were discussing data analysis and data visualization with the students. And we were using this spreadsheet as an example. And we were walking out of class one day and Bob said, gee, I wonder who Chelsea Ryder is. She sees she's at the top of the Excel spreadsheet and happens to have a lot of Twitter connections. So I wondered if I could, I wondered if I could see. So yeah, I used the fact that I started with the fact that the Excel spreadsheet tells me Chelsea Ryder had 2,607 tweets, right? And I looked for somebody like with that name like that on Twitter, and then I found out that, yeah, this is Chelsea. There are two pictures of Chelsea Ryder. This is from the spring of 2018, right? She was an Army veteran, a single mother. She has a JD degree, and she has a variety of interests, including this one, Pandas, which is the name of a data analytics program widely used to produce things like the visualization you saw. Right? So she has a JD, and then she said she will take the bar exam in February 2019. Well, there are only two reasons for taking the bar, basically two reasons for taking the bar exam in February. You failed the first time, it's typically offered in July. And if you fail, you can retake it again in February. Or there was some reason for you to delay. Yeah. So I looked some more later on in 2018 and 2019, where this picture comes. Yep, she passes the bar in 2019, having taken it, if I remember, 5 times. She kept failing. She finally passed by 1 point, and you can find, and we can find out other things, that she lives in Houston. This is her email, by the way, which she makes publicly available. And she works for the National Sheriff's Association in Houston, Texas, where she manages their social media, not unsurprisingly. So, and this is a picture of Chelsea Ryder's connections, visualizing the picture, connection of the people that a picture of the people she's connected to. And this is another one. This yellow group is the people that are in Chelsea Ryder's community, right? The people more connected to each other than they are to anybody else. And so think about, I'd stopped, right? But I could have investigated all the people that are yellow connections in the way I did Chelsea Ryder and get an even fuller picture of her life. And I really got ambitious. I could investigate the people, the red, blue, and green people, and get a picture of the whole Twitter group that she's a part of. And so the point is, if I can do this, so the point is, if I can do this, right? I'm not a data and analytics expert. If I can do this with the information that I can get publicly available, what can businesses like Facebook, Google, Amazon do, right? What can the governments do that have very skilled people and massive amounts of data? They can peer very, very deeply into your lives. And businesses and governments want to, and their lawyers respond to that in part by designing standard form contracts for online activities that enable them to do that, while also responding to public pressure and the pressure from regulators to respect privacy and limit data collection. That's what we're going to see. But I like to begin, because I think when lawyers discuss this, we discuss it in the abstract. We don't often look at the details and just get a really good impression of just what we're talking about, just how incredibly powerful modern data analysis techniques are to reveal things about our lives. Witness Chelsea Ryder. Right? So where are we going to go? We're going to look at contract law in a changed world, right? And you can see our list. This is our rough and ready list of what we'll talk about. There are a number of subsidiary topics along the way, but our immediate goal is to work our way through these topics and see how contract law has changed, as I said, and indeed how it has remained the same. So till the next video, take care.